The clock struck 5 p.m. For the first time in months. Daniel left the office early, carrying a small box of toys he had promised his little girl, Emily. He imagined her smile, the way her tiny hands would grab his, and the innocent laughter that always melted his stress away. But what he never imagined was that walking through that front door early would uncover a truth so dark it would change his life forever. Daniel always believed that life was about small promises. Promises to his daughter, to himself, and to the family he thought was whole. He was the kind of man who rarely took time off, a man whose long days at the office stretched late into the night, all in the name of giving his little girl, Emily, the best life possible. For Daniel, success wasn't measured in money or status. It was measured in the light of his daughter's smile. And tonight, for the first time in weeks, he was coming home early, just to see that smile again. He carried a small box tucked under his arm. Inside were 2 tiny dolls Emily had been begging for, the ones she had seen in a shop window last month. He'd promised her, "Daddy will bring them to you soon." Tonight, he intended to fulfill that promise. His heart raced with the thought of her squeal of delight, the way she would run toward him with her arms wide open, as if the whole world existed in that embrace. As he drove home, the golden glow of sunset painted the streets. The city outside was busy, people hurrying, laughing, and rushing to dinners, but Daniel's mind was far away, focused only on Emily. She was his anchor. After her birth, his life had changed forever. Every choice, every late hour, every sacrifice he made at work was for her. Clara, his wife, had always been part of that picture too. Neighbors called them the perfect family, and Daniel believed it. Or maybe he wanted to believe it so badly that he ignored the cracks forming beneath the surface. In recent months, Daniel had noticed small changes in Emily. She was quieter, her laughter less frequent, her eyes sometimes carrying a shadow no child should bear. He had asked Clara about it once. She brushed it off, saying, "She's just shy. Maybe she misses you when you're at work so much." And Daniel, guilty for the endless overtime, had accepted that explanation. After all, Clara had always appeared gentle, patient, and caring in front of others. How could he doubt her? But tonight would reveal the truth. When Daniel reached his street, a sense of anticipation swelled in his chest. He parked quickly, climbed the steps to his home, and placed the key into the lock. He imagined Emily's little footsteps rushing to him, her voice calling, "Daddy, you're home early." That thought alone made him smile. Yet when the door creaked open, silence greeted him. The house was too still, too heavy. No cartoons played in the living room, no sound of toys scattering on the floor, no sign of the warm chaos Emily usually brought. The silence felt wrong. "Emily?" Daniel called softly, stepping inside. His voice echoed in the emptiness. He glanced toward the kitchen. No one there. His heart skipped. Usually, at this hour, Clara would be preparing dinner, humming lightly as Emily sat at the counter drawing or playing. But tonight, the air was different. Then he heard it. A faint muffled sound. A whimper. The kind of sound a child makes when they're trying not to cry. It came from down the hallway. Daniel's entire body stiffened. He placed the box of toys on the table, his pulse quickening. Something inside him whispered that this wasn't right. Slowly, carefully, he moved toward Emily's room. Each step made the sound clearer, a soft, broken sob. His chest tightened with dread. The door was half open, just enough for him to see the glow of the lamp inside. He paused, his hand trembling against the frame, his breath caught in his throat. For a split second, he thought about walking away, convincing himself it was nothing. Maybe Emily was upset about something small. Maybe Clara was comforting her. But another sob tore through the silence, sharper this time, and it pushed Daniel forward. He leaned closer, peering through the narrow gap. And in that moment, his world began to unravel. What he saw inside the room didn't make sense at first. It couldn't. The image was too sharp, too cruel, too far from the family he thought he had. His blood ran cold, his muscles locked, and the toy box he carried slipped from his hands, hitting the wooden floor with a dull thud. The sound echoed, but inside his chest only silence remained. The silence before a storm that was about to shatter everything he believed in. Daniel had come home early to surprise his daughter with toys. Instead, he was about to uncover a truth that would burn itself into his soul forever. Daniel's eyes widened as he pushed the door open just enough to see what was happening inside. The room he had decorated with pastel walls, fairy lights, and stuffed animals The room meant to be a sanctuary for his little girl had turned into something unrecognizable. Emily was huddled in the corner of her bed, her tiny body shaking, her cheeks glistening with tears. And standing over her was Clara, his wife, the woman he had trusted more than anyone. But she wasn't the woman Daniel thought he knew. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "You never listen, Emily," Clara hissed, her hand raised threateningly. "Do you want to embarrass me again? Do you want Daddy to think you're weak?" Daniel's heart stopped. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He couldn't process what he was seeing. The woman he had married, the mother of his child, was hurting the very person he lived for. Emily whimpered softly. "Please, Mommy, I'll be good. Please." Her little hands covered her face, bracing for the next strike. The box of toys Daniel had carried fell from his trembling hands and hit the wooden floor with a crash. The sound startled both Clara and Emily. Clara spun around, her face pale, her eyes wide. For the first time in years, Daniel saw something in her gaze he had never noticed before: guilt, fear, and a flicker of rage. "Daniel," she stammered, "this isn't what it looks like." But Daniel didn't hear her. His eyes were fixed on Emily, his baby girl. She looked at him with wide, tear-streaked eyes, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Daddy." That one word shattered Daniel. The innocence in her voice, the desperate relief that he was there. It broke something inside him that could never be mended. His blood boiled with rage, his vision blurred, and every instinct screamed at him to protect her. "What have you done?" His voice was low, dangerous, trembling with fury he could barely contain. Clara's mask cracked. She tried to move toward him, her hands raised as if to defend herself. "Daniel, listen to me." "She exaggerates everything. She's just sensitive." "You don't understand." "Don't!" His voice thundered, shaking the room. "Don't you dare lie to me!" Clara flinched. For a moment, the confident, polished woman she always showed the world was gone. In her place stood someone weak, desperate, and cruel. Daniel moved across the room in an instant, pulling Emily into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, clinging to him as though she had been holding her breath for months and finally exhaled. He felt the tiny tremors of her body, the way she clutched his shirt with all her strength. And in that moment, Daniel made a silent vow. Nothing and no one would ever hurt her again. Clara reached out, her voice breaking. "Daniel, please, I didn't mean to." He turned on her, his eyes blazing. "You didn't mean to? She's a child. Our child. And you." His voice caught, fury colliding with heartbreak. "You chose to break her instead of love her." The silence that followed was unbearable. Clara's lips trembled as she tried to form excuses, but Daniel had heard enough. Every memory of her, every image of the perfect wife she pretended to be, disintegrated before his eyes. What remained was the truth, ugly, undeniable, and unforgivable. Emily whimpered again, tightening her hold around Daniel's neck. He kissed her hair, whispering softly, "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here now. No one will hurt you again." In that instant, Daniel knew his life would never be the same. The trust he once had in his marriage was gone, shattered beyond repair. What remained was his role as a father, a protector, a shield, a man who would give everything to make sure his daughter never felt fear again. Clara stood frozen, her words falling flat in the heavy silence. Daniel didn't need to shout anymore. His presence, his fury, his silence, it was enough to make her realize she had lost everything. The man who had once loved her now looked at her as if she were a stranger. And in truth she was. Daniel held Emily tighter, his heart breaking with every sob she let out. He had walked into this house with toys, thinking he would bring her joy. Instead, he discovered a darkness that had been hiding right in front of him. And as he carried Emily out of the room, one thought echoed in his mind. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a fight for his daughter's safety, a fight he was prepared to win at any cost. Daniel carried Emily out of that room as if she were made of glass. Her tiny arms wrapped around his neck, her sobs muffled against his chest. Each step he took felt like it carried the weight of the world, yet he held her firmly, shielding her from the darkness that had poisoned their home. The house that once felt warm, once echoed with laughter, now felt like a prison filled with betrayal. He stopped at the front door, his breath heavy, his jaw clenched. Clara's voice trailed behind him, desperate and pleading. "Daniel, please." You don't understand. I can explain. He turned his head, his glare sharp as steel. There is nothing to explain. I saw everything. You heard her. That's all I need to know. For the first time, Clara's confidence shattered completely. She reached out, her eyes wet, her face pale. But Daniel stepped back, shielding Emily even tighter. In his arms, Emily's small hand gripped his shirt as if begging him not to let go. And he never would. Not again. Without another word, Daniel left the house. The cool night air hit his face, but instead of relief, it carried a storm inside him. He opened the car door gently, placing Emily in the back seat. She looked up at him, her tear-stained cheeks glowing in the faint streetlight. Daddy, are we leaving? She whispered, her voice so fragile it broke him all over again. Yes, sweetheart, Daniel said softly, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. We're leaving. You're safe now, I promise. As he drove away, the house shrank in the rearview mirror, a shadow of the life he once believed in. For years he had thought of that house as a home. But a home was never about walls or furniture. It was about love, trust, and safety. And tonight, he realized those things had been gone for far too long. In the days that followed, Daniel took action. He reported everything. He made sure Clara would never get near Emily again. The law moved slowly, but Daniel's determination was unshakable. Friends and neighbors were shocked. They had never suspected the truth behind the closed doors of his home. Clara had worn her mask well, but masks always crack eventually. Through it all, Emily clung to Daniel. At night, she would wake from nightmares, crying softly, and Daniel would hold her until she fell back asleep. He read her stories, cooked her favorite meals, and filled her room in their new apartment with toys, books, and colors. Slowly, her laughter returned. Not as bright as before, not yet, but enough to remind him why he fought so hard. One evening, weeks later, Daniel sat on the couch with Emily curled up beside him. She was quieter now, more thoughtful, but her small smile warmed his heart. She looked up at him and said, "Daddy, you're my hero." Those words pierced him deeper than any wound ever could. He hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. He wasn't perfect, and he knew he had failed once by not seeing the signs sooner. But now he would never fail her again. He kissed the top of her head and whispered, "No, Emily, you're the hero. You're brave, and from now on, Daddy's going to make sure nothing ever hurts you again." The strength in those words wasn't just a promise. It was a vow carved into his very soul. Time passed, and though scars remained, healing began. Daniel learned that being a father wasn't just about working long hours to provide. It was about being present, being vigilant, and being the shield against the storms of the world. Emily, despite the pain she had endured, began to bloom again. She painted pictures, laughed at cartoons, and held her father's hand everywhere they went. And Clara? She faded into the past, a shadow, a reminder of betrayal, yes, but also of the strength Daniel discovered within himself when everything seemed lost. In the end, Daniel realized something powerful. Love is not about appearances, not about the image of a perfect family others see. It's about sacrifice, protection, and standing up for what's right, even when it tears your heart apart. That night, as Daniel tucked Emily into bed, she whispered, "Good night." "Daddy, I love you," he smiled, his eyes glistening. "I love you too, more than anything in this world." And as he watched her drift into peaceful sleep, Daniel knew the truth. Their story was not one of tragedy, but of survival. It was not about betrayal, but about resilience. The ending wasn't the destruction of a family, it was the rebirth of one. For in protecting his daughter, Daniel had found his true purpose. And no force in this world could ever take that away. Daniel lost a wife that night, but he gained something far greater, the courage to protect his daughter at any cost. He realized a true father isn't defined by providing, but by standing as a shield against the world's cruelty. She broke his trust, but she would never break his daughter again. That night, Daniel didn't just save Emily's future, he became her future.